"What the hell is this?" screamed my soon-to-be ex-wife, throwing papers on the table. "What are you trying to arrange?" "I'm not trying to arrange anything, dear. I think it's pretty clear that we never really worked out our issues, and since we never revoked the separation agreement, our divorce will proceed as it would have. 6 years ago." I sighed and turned to the refrigerator to get a cold beer. "Don't think you'll get away with this. That's bullshit. What about the last 6 years? Everyone knows we've made peace." Terry was seething with anger and seemed ready to explode. If looks could kill. "Look, yes, we have lived under the same roof for the last 6 years since you came home, but the truth is that you never truly committed to the S. Oh, sure, we looked and acted like a normal family, went to kids' events, had parties here in the house, but be honest, am I really the person you want to spend the rest of your life with?" Terry just stood there and glared at me, finally turning around and putting her hands on the counter by the sink. For a moment, I thought she was going to throw up in the sink, but then she turned around and exploded. "I stopped talking to Rob and came back here because you said you would forgive me, and because I thought it would be better for the kids and maybe we could put our lives back together." I started again. "Wife for you and tried to make everything right, and now you're telling me it was all a lie." Terry threw the divorce papers at me and ran out of the kitchen. Well, it went about as expected, I thought, and took another sip of beer. I had no illusions that things could have gone differently. In fact, I'm surprised she didn't start throwing things. It's true that she stopped contacting Rob, but that's also because he didn't want anything to do with her. I left the kitchen and headed to the garage. The third bay of our 3-car garage was my workshop. I've been spending a lot of time there lately and thinking a lot about the past years. I remembered the old saying, "A wife lasts as long as the marriage lasts. The ex-wife lasts for the rest of your life." 7 years ago. The bus left after picking up the kids and my wife closed the door, returning with a cup of coffee in her hand after saying goodbye to the kids. Even though they were in middle school and reaching an age where they didn't want their parents around any more than necessary, they still didn't mind if one of us walked them to school. Only if we stayed on the porch, the 200 feet distance from the road gave them plausible deniability of our actions. Chloe was almost 14 and Danny was 11. Terry turned and looked at me, and I could tell there was trouble brewing. Our counseling session last week was quite stressful, and we were scheduled to return to Dr. Mike in 2 days. She took a deep breath and said, "I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just not happy, and I don't want you to come tonight." And with that, she turned and walked up the stairs. Damn it! Does this mean she wants a divorce? Does she want to stop seeing a psychologist? What? We ended up avoiding each other all morning and afternoon. She came down and said, "I'll meet Amy at the cafe, and then we'll go to the restaurant. I don't want you to come. Dinner for you and the kids is in the refrigerator." Well, damn it. We had to go with friends tonight. Us, Amy, her boyfriend Bill, and Rob. Bill, Rob, and I all worked together at the naval base. The 5 of us formed the core of our social group. Terry and Amy were supposed to meet first and then go to a restaurant for a girls' night out. At least that's what Amy thought. I was supposed to come later and Bill and Rob were supposed to join us after work. This was the plan. In reality, Terry will tell Amy to go to the reserved table while she goes to the ladies' room. Bill will be there with flowers to formally propose to her. Then Terry, myself, and Rob will join them, and the celebration will begin. I was in a bit of a fog, but quickly realized it was serious. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I needed to start thinking about myself. I started Googling everything I could find about divorce laws in Virginia and realized this was going to be a nightmare for me. So much for the past 17 years. That's how we ended up in this situation 7 years ago. The past few years have been difficult for her as both of her parents got cancer and died within a year and a half of each other. Then her brother had cancer, which left him physically debilitated, although he survived and is now cancer-free. However, Terry seemed to be sinking deeper and deeper into depression. Rarely a week went by without her lashing out at me or complaining about some minor problem. The fact that I couldn't understand why this was a problem made her even angrier. Typical flashes looked like this. "Why can't you stop doing things that annoy me?" she screamed. "Maybe if you were a little clearer about what you want, I wouldn't irritate you. Jesus Christ, woman, say what you mean and mean what you say." I remember many such disputes. Terry left that afternoon to meet Amy, and I sat down at the computer. My cobwebby senses were screaming that something was wrong in the house, and maybe I would find the answer in her email. Well, what is this? Did she change her password? I was a computer guru core user. She barely knew how to check her mail. I installed the keylogger and started preparing dinner. Children being children, they had no idea that their world was about to change, and I was not going to say anything. I put them to bed, telling our daughter not to stay up late reading, and went into our bedroom. I couldn't sleep. What the hell is going to happen to us? Am I headed for financial disaster like every other guy who gets divorced? Why now? Yes, my last few times with the psychologist have been pretty terrible, to the point where I was almost ready to leave a couple weeks ago due to her disrespect. He even reproached her for this. Terry said, "Ken is overconfident. He thinks he knows everything. That's the problem." Dr. Tays, Mike examined it and said, "No, Ken is not overconfident. He is confident in himself, and that is a good thing in life, and especially in his profession. But he is not overconfident. Overconfidence means that someone thinks that he is better than everyone else, others, or that he's not willing to change or listen to other points of view. I don't see that here, so no, Mike is not confident." She was literally steaming, figuratively speaking, of course, but it was clear that she was angry that he did not agree with her. I'm surprised she didn't get up and leave. Obviously, the rest of the session was wasted. I lay in bed, tossing and turning, the hours passing. Midnight has passed, no Terry. 1 in the morning, same thing. Finally, around 1:30, I heard her come in and quietly walk up the stairs. When she entered the room, I growled, "Where were you, and who were you with?" She shuddered and said, "I was walking along the bike path and thinking." Yes, of course, as if I would believe it. What kind of woman would go for a walk on a bike path at midnight? "I need to go to bed and rest. We can talk in the morning." Eventually, I dozed off. That night, I slept maybe 4 hours. I made the kids breakfast and got them off to school just in time for Terry to come downstairs. We stood looking at each other. Neither of us wanted to start a conversation. In the end, she said she would stay in the guest room until we sorted things out. That's when I drew a line in the sand. "Well, if you want to leave, you can move out. I'm staying here, and so are the kids." "Why should I leave?" she asked. "Why not you?" "Well, first of all, you're the one who wants to leave, not me. Second of all, you'll have to work full-time and you won't be able to afford this house, even with alimony, let alone maintain it and take care of it. Damn, you've already complained that you don't have time to do housework, even though you've only been working 2 days a week for the past few years." She jerked her head as if she wanted to say something. I continued, "And I'm not going to force kids to move into some apartment or rental house in another school district. Their lives should be as stable as possible." She stormed off in a rage, and I went about my business. We had a session with a psychologist that day. When I told Dr. Big Mike that she wanted a divorce, his first comment was, "That's what she wants now. That may change." I said I thought she was lying to me when she said she was walking on the bike path that night. He even asked her if she was cheating on me, which she vehemently denied. To be honest, I don't remember most of that session. I dropped her off at her car in town and went to work. That evening I came home, went into my office, and checked the keylogger. Bingo, the new password for her email, as well as the text of the letter she wrote. Damn it. She's got something going on with Rob. What about Rob, our friend, my colleague? Crap. Without going into long and tedious detail, here's what happened next. Apparently, she talked Rob into joining her and Amy in the Catholic Church choir a few months ago, and over time decided that Rob had all the qualities she wanted in life. Now I have to tell you, it was an open secret in our social circle that Rob, at the age of 38, still wasn't with a woman. He was waiting for that one right woman. Oddly enough, despite all his good qualities, he did not know how to approach a woman. As I later learned, Terry told Rob that me and her were finished. She thought they made a wonderful couple and insisted on a relationship. Oh sure, he tried to dissuade her at first and encouraged her to make things right with me. But after a few weeks, she decided she wanted to move out and rented an apartment with a friend. I just have to be on my own and handle my own affairs. She mumbled as if she was trying to convince herself that everything would be the way she wanted. And once I do that, maybe we can start dating and try to make our relationship work. Yes, of course, anything. A week later, she already went on a date with Rob and the children. A month later, they announced their relationship to the rest of the choir. Yes, you read that right. They told the Catholic Church choir that they were a couple. This was less than 2 months after she told me she wanted a divorce. Damn it. Of course, I lashed out at her for bringing the kids into this relationship a week after she moved out. She responded furiously, "It doesn't bother them. You're the only one with a problem, so don't care." The kids did what teenagers do, just played together, not wanting to make waves with either parent. How I got through those first couple of months. It was terrible at work. Luckily, Rob and I worked in different departments and rarely interacted. And to his very small credit, he never told anyone that he was dating my wife. I think he already felt guilty about this situation. As devastating as it was for me, karma caught up with her a few months later in the form of a voicemail from Terry. Whining, crying voice, "Hi, it's me. I just wanted to tell you that you don't have to worry about having kids with Rob anymore. After talking with the priest, we decided that we should wait until my divorce was finalized before dating. I hope this makes you happy." As I later learned, Rob received a scolding from his very godly parents for dating a woman who was still married and cut off all contact with Terry. During this time, Terry came home to pick up the children on weekdays and sometimes use the computer. One day, she forgot to close her mail, and I read and saved everything, including a letter in which Rob said she ruined it for his future wife, and he asked if her women's days had begun. So now I had proof of cheating. It turned out that she was just delayed, but was afraid that she might be pregnant at 43 years old. Meanwhile, I joined an online dating service and specifically indicated that I was divorced and not looking for a relationship. I just wanted to meet people so we could go out and do things together. A few days later, one of Terry's friends saw it and told her. I received a call. Can you imagine how painful it is to find out that you are on a dating site? It probably doesn't hurt as much as finding out that you were hiding with Rob and then definitely declaring it publicly. Bam, they hung up the phone. I think she didn't want to talk anymore. And that's how life went on. We actually worked out a separation agreement that wasn't too painful for me. Well, at least for my pension and investments. I stayed in the house with the kids and didn't have to buy out her share until they finished school. The idea was that they would have a safe, familiar place to end their teenage years without having to change schools. To be honest, I came out pretty well. I think she thought everything would be fine with Mr. Wonderful and didn't really care. She simply told her lawyer to write down what we agreed on. Over the next few months, we got to the point where we were no longer mean to each other. The children did fairly well at school and did not seem to be too affected by the breakup. I think they didn't particularly like the living conditions and the fact that they didn't see their mother every day, but the children adapted. The following spring, we settled into a routine with less than 2 months left before we were due to file for divorce. I called Terry to talk about taxes. "What?" she screamed when she answered. "Hey, we need to discuss last year's taxes and split the proceeds from the sale of the rental property. And you need to file separately as a married person." "Why should I file taxes? You've always done it, and we're still married." She replied sarcastically. "Well, yes, but I can file as the head of the family because the children live with me. You must file as a married woman separately." "But I don't know how to do it. I've never paid taxes. She complained. Hey, you yourself told me last year that you need to be independent and take care of your own affairs. So figure it out. You're right, I need to start doing these things. It's just so hard sometimes. I work 5 days a week. I have to pick up the kids on Wednesdays, and when you work on the weekends, I don't have time for myself. And apparently, Rob doesn't want anything to do with me. Part of me wanted to gloat. She arranged it herself. Although my life has been busy and being a near full-time parent to 2 teenagers has been challenging, I have always been good at managing my time and have actually thrived. And I worked full-time and also overtime when problems happened at work. A few weeks later, she came to our house to pick up the kids after school. I was at home, having taken the day off at the last minute. She looked very tired, and I actually felt a little sorry for her. Hey, I know today is your day to pick them up, but what if you stay here at the house? I can make dinner, and you can eat here instead of going somewhere or going back to your place. Really? You'll do it? She asked. I don't want to be a nuisance. No, it's not a problem. I went grocery shopping this morning, so I have plenty of food. I can cook something while you spend time with the kids. Plus, you look like you need some rest. Oh, what do you mean by that? Terry asked sharply. Nothing. It's obvious that you're tired, and you even said the other day that you don't have time for yourself. Just accept that I'm trying to be considerate. God, sometimes a man can't do anything. You're right, I'm sorry. It's been a rough week at work. Thanks for the offer. She went off to spend time with the kids, and I got busy with dinner. We had a nice dinner together. It was almost like the old days when we all sat around the table. Not like the last couple of years, when there was always some kind of underlying anger, resentment, depression emanating from Terry. Dinner is over. Chloe, Danny, go to your homework, and maybe we'll have time for a movie before I have to leave. Turning to me, she said, let me at least clean the kitchen and dishes. I had already started clearing the table and told her, well, you can help. Put the leftovers in this container and put it away in the refrigerator. I'll take this for lunch tomorrow. I was busy washing pots and pans while she dried them. We didn't talk, but when I turned to take the plate, I realized that she was looking at me. What? Nothing, she said quietly. I know you, it's not nothing. She put down the towel and looked at me. I was angry with you for a long time and didn't know how to deal with it. Every time I thought about that huge fight, the one when you said you weren't even sure you wanted to be married to me, it just brought out the old anger in me. Yes, I know, you said it in a rush moment, and I pushed your buttons then, but for some reason it always stayed in my head. And then my parents died, and I felt like I just had to leave. I didn't want to hurt you by starting a relationship with you, Rob, and it really blew up in my face. I nodded and said, yeah, well, we've both made mistakes. I just hope we can stay on good terms after the divorce is finalized. And if I start dating someone, I'll wait a while. Time before I introduce them to the children. She simply nodded and went into the cafeteria, where the children were doing their homework. It seems that after that evening, everything really got better. We started talking on the phone a little more often, although it was usually about the children. The 1-year period was almost up, and she could file for divorce, but I noticed that we hadn't spoken in over a week. 2 weeks passed, and I still hadn't heard anything from my lawyer when I came home one day to find Terry sitting on the porch. It wasn't her day to see the children, and they weren't due back from school for another hour. What happened? What are you doing here? I asked. She lowered her head for a moment and then said, can we go inside and talk? Of course. Are you okay? Yeah. No. I don't know. I'm just confused. Ken, the last few months have been very confusing. I was miserable for years, thinking you didn't want to be married to me, and then every time I was around Rob, it seemed like he was everything you weren't. Or rather, he wasn't everything that irritates me about you, and I know that's unfair. No, Terry, that's not true. You only saw him in situations where everything was good and happy. You didn't see him when everything was crap, so it's not a fair comparison. And for months, you've been picking fights over nothing. Damn it, even in Dr. Paz Mike's office, you couldn't be honest about what was really bothering you. I sat down and looked at the ground. So what do you want? I looked her straight in the face. I think I should have been more honest with myself, with you, with Dr. G's Mike, about all the things that were bothering me, and maybe I wouldn't have ruined our marriage. A few months ago, you seemed ready to reconcile. I think I want to know if you feel the same. Wow, I didn't expect this. Ultimately, she decided that she wasn't sure if she wanted a divorce. She started therapy and realized that I was not the root of her unhappiness. She realized that she shouldn't have gotten into a relationship with Rob, no matter how short it was, and her therapist prescribed her medication, which seemed to even out her mood. I was, of course, shocked. I sometimes suggested that we try to make things work, always met with anger and negativity. But in the last few months, we seem to be getting along better. Will I be able to forgive and forget her relationship with Rob? She believed that because she told me the marriage was over before telling Rob she wanted him, it wasn't cheating. Verbal tricks, as it were. I realized that Rob wasn't the reason we broke up. He was simply a byproduct of our conflict. I sat silently for a while. That's a lot to digest. I need to think about what you said. I don't think I can respond right now. Can I think about what you said and maybe talk in a day or two? She lowered her head and said quietly, "Yeah, I didn't think you'd say yes, so take a moment and let me know if and when you want to talk." She left soon after, and I went into my office with a large glass of Jack Daniels to reflect. I've been on an emotional roller coaster for the past year, from being hit unexpectedly to realizing that she essentially forced goods to relationships, and then wanting us to solve all our problems. Now, I didn't know if I wanted her to come home, at least not right away. I needed to think about the children and their well-being. When she first contacted Rob, they were a little confused. Then they thought it was really cool because in the end, we separated and Mom is happy, right? Wrong. Some things are just wrong. But they were much more relaxed now that they saw that we were getting along. Her feeling that she could stay longer when she came home also made the situation more normal. Taking her back and trying to reconcile would be good for them, and honestly, I understood why she felt like she needed a divorce, just not in the way she did it. I still wasn't sure if I wanted to get her back and then break up again in a few months or a year. In the end, I agreed that maybe, just maybe, we could reconcile and put everything back together. I called her and suggested we meet at a cafe in the city. "Terry, if you're serious about this, I think we need to set some rules. Things we both agree on. I don't want the kids to suffer if we don't work out. And if either of us decides that we need to get a divorce, we will first tell the other person." She agreed. We started just going on a few dates with each other, and although it was a little awkward at first, we quickly got into a routine. Over the next few months, she began to spend more time in the house, and we ate dinner together as a family 2 or 3 times a week, depending on our work schedules. We talked a lot, not just about our day or the kids, but we really talked about what we needed from each other and what we wanted to see and do. We haven't slept together yet. Everything still seemed a little uncertain. One evening, about 4 months after that conversation, we went to the cinema, just the two of us. The children were home alone for several hours. The movie wasn't very good, and halfway through Terry turned to me and said, "I think I can offer better entertainment than this, but you need to take me back to my apartment." I looked at her and asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes, and don't ruin the evening by asking me again." We ended up at her apartment, and I have to admit, the sex was pretty good. Better than the last years of our marriage. But then again, I haven't had sex in over a year. This seemed like a turning point in our new relationship. Things started to feel more comfortable, and we became more relaxed with each other. A year and a half after she first said she wanted a divorce, she returned home. She actually started spending the night in the house, sometimes before we decided she would move out, so it wasn't too weird when she actually came back. Surprisingly, the children easily adapted to our renewed marriage, and everything seemed pretty good. Even our sex life was, well, not spectacular, but at least as good as when we first got married, and Terry seemed to want to keep improving it in that regard. Publicly, we seemed to have weathered the storm. She told people that therapy had helped her, that I was generous enough to forgive her, and almost everyone seemed to accept this version of events. Oh, some guys made fun of me for being a weakling and a coward. How could you give in to her? There seemed to be a common theme. I didn't care. I was playing the long game. If everything works out, great. If not, I'll be in a better place. Fuck people who make jokes, it's not their life. As far as work goes, it hasn't really been the problem one would expect. As I said, Rob never talked about what happened. In fact, one day, a few weeks after he ended things with Terry, he asked to talk to me. We went out onto the walking path around our property, and he apologized for what happened and said he wouldn't see her again, that it was wrong to get involved with her. Having already gained some satisfaction from the fact that she was devastated, and knowing that he felt guilty, I did not need to seek revenge. Oh, I still don't talk to him. Our friendship, whatever it was over, but I didn't need to waste energy on him. Years later, he actually met someone and got married. I laughed when I learned that he became a father at 49, so goodbye early retirement. So life went on, and over the years, it seemed like we were getting by. And now to the present. Damn, I wonder what happened. As I said, when we separated 7 years ago, we amicably agreed to a separation agreement that covered how things would be distributed, child custody, visitation, etc. And most importantly, it protected my pension and investments from being split in half. Oh, she'll get something, but not even half. And this agreement was still in effect. Because deep within those 20-plus pages was a term that stated that the agreement would remain in full force and effect unless expressly revoked by the parties, notwithstanding any reconciliation or cohabitation of the parties. Note the directly canceled, as in writing. Those, my get-out-of-jail-free card. And I didn't have to wait a year. You see, now that the children were no longer minors, the waiting period was reduced to 6 months. Chloe had already left for college, and Danny had just graduated from high school and turned 18. He joined the reserves and planned to attend college before transferring to Yuva. So what's the problem? Why did I just detonate a bomb on my wife? As far as I know, she was faithful. She was a good mother, a pretty good wife by all accounts, and if you asked around, most of our friends would say we had a decent marriage. Maybe not great, but pretty good. Notice I said most of our friends. The problem was that although we reconciled, I could never shake the devastation that she left me. Over the past 6 years, I have tried to survive this. Most of the time, I was able to rationalize things and realize that we had a pretty good relationship. We seemed to be better parents this time compared to before the breakup. We even had a good sex life. In some ways, she was better than she had been in the last few years before the breakup. True, she was not very affectionate, especially in public, and often made comments about how our reunion was good for the children. Rarely did she ever act like we were in love, and frankly, neither did I. I'm sure some people will think I'm just having empty nest syndrome now that both kids are out of the house and out into the world. I wouldn't agree. If anything, not having kids just made it even more obvious that Terry was just putting up with me. Things have been slowly fading away for the last year or so, and I wanted to move on with my life before either of us reached the point where we started hating each other. When Chloe left for college, I even suggested that Terry see a counselor to help us adjust to no longer having the kids around all the time. Danny had rights and was often busy with some kind of business or event. I thought we needed something to stay connected. Terry didn't think so and refused to go. I realized that she and I were on different paths and our relationship probably wouldn't last. More importantly, did I want them to endure. I really hoped that when we made up, we would truly start over and rebuild our relationship. Let's be one and continue this into our golden years. And now I'm just over 50, wondering what the next 30 or 40 years will bring. I have always loved exercise and sports. Over the years, I moved a little away from what I enjoyed as I needed to be more present with my family and their needs. I no longer went on long bike rides. I only went out on my little boat a couple of times a year. Terry was not interested in any of these activities. I went out to the garage and sat down in my workshop. As I sat there thinking about the last few years, I realized that our marriage had never truly been repaired, and it probably never will be. The question was, did I want to continue to just tread water with Terry, pretending everything was fine? And what if she decides she's unhappy again and leaves? How will it affect me this time? That's when I remembered our property division agreement concluded 7 years ago. I called my lawyer and made an appointment for the following week. For the next few days, I was loaded wondering if I'm doing the right thing. Do I really want to quit, or should I make more effort? I decided that while I hadn't done anything, it wouldn't hurt to know where I stood. I'm sure I was a little distracted, but Terry never said anything. I don't think she even noticed that I wasn't myself. On Thursday, I went to see John, my lawyer. "Hey, long time no see. I guess that's good. Do you want to talk about estate planning?" He greeted me. "No, not about that. John, remember when Terry and I broke up? You and her lawyer worked out a separation agreement based on what we agreed on. Then we got back together, and overall everything was pretty good. But I don't see a future for us anymore. I think it's time to move on, and I'm not sure I care. What I need to know is, will this agreement still be valid, even after 7 years?" Well, Ken, as you know, it says it will stand even if you reconcile or move in together. But she can always try to fight it in court. I guess the reality is that you never know what the judge will decide, especially if circumstances have changed a lot since your initial breakup. Another thing, I hope you remember my advice back then not to make any major financial commitments with her. Don't refinance the house, don't buy anything between the two of you. John, that was probably the best advice you gave me back then. We kept our finances separate, and she only contributed to groceries and things for the kids. I paid all the bills for the house, so hopefully we're okay here. Ken, all I can say is that you have to decide what's best for you. Good luck. Keep me posted on whatever you decide. The next day, I took a personal day from work and got into my car. Years ago, I bought an old Porsche 911 for cheap. It had over 100K miles and needed some work, but was in good condition. They kept it in the garage, and I kept doing it. Now, years later, the market for air Porsches was hot, and I could probably get two, maybe even 5 times what I paid for it. I headed to the racetrack since it was Track Friday. A few laps helped me clear my head, and I knew what to do. The next few weeks were spent on seriously thinking about how to get out of a marriage without completely destroying your relationship with your children. While they were glad we never got divorced, they also knew we weren't as strong a couple as many of their friends' parents. So I don't think it will be a big surprise for them. I went back to John and asked him to draw up the divorce papers. I didn't want them to be handed to her personally by some stranger or officer. It would be like salt in the wound. He said I could hand it to her myself, and if she accepted it, it would be legal. If she decides to contest the papers, then he will arrange for them to be formally filed. At least that was the plan. Now I realized that I was close to taking early retirement and could get a job with a government contracting company with a much higher salary. More importantly, I could probably negotiate part-time or remote work most of the time. We could sell the house, get a decent amount of money, and be pretty well off financially. Since the kids' college was mostly paid for, we wouldn't have a lot of expenses there, and neither of us would end up in some terrible apartment. Which brings us to today. I've given this some serious thought. That is, I thought painfully, am I doing the right thing, or am I just reacting to the fact that she didn't seem as committed as I would like? I even waited almost a month after I told John to draw up the papers. But yesterday I stopped by his office, and Linda, his secretary, handed me the treasured envelope. I was at home, sitting at the kitchen table, when Terry pulled up and walked through the laundry room door. "You know, I really fucking want you to either get rid of this stupid Porsche or make room in another part of the garage so I can park my car inside instead of walking outside, especially when it's cold or rainy." And good afternoon to you too, my dear wife, I said with slight sarcasm. I think this won't be a problem for much longer, or at least not an important problem. Oh, are you finally going to do something? In a way, yes. And with that, I handed her the envelope. What is this? She said. Did the mail arrive early? Just read it. I took another sip of my beer. She looked through the papers and stared at me. You're probably wondering why I'm doing this after 6 years, I said. You're damn right. I came back here because you made it clear that you would forgive me and it would be good for the kids and we could put everything back together. She half screamed, half sobbed. Things have never been the same since you left back then. I didn't know how to fix it, but then I realized something. No matter what I did to improve our marriage, you could leave again and file for divorce at any time. I just decided to get ahead of you. And the truth is, I just don't care anymore. And I left. Later, when the screaming and yelling had died down, we sat down and I told her everything I was thinking about. How it felt like we were just going with the flow, but not moving forward in our relationship. And yes, I felt some pain from what happened 7 years ago. Terry was angry for a while, but eventually I think she realized it was probably for the best. Oh, her lawyer tried to challenge the agreement and renegotiate it, but the fact that I was paying all the bills on the house and Terry wasn't contributing would have tilted the situation in my favor if it had gone to a judge's decision. Eventually, they gave up. I could probably give her more of my pension since I worked more than 7 years and received several promotions since the agreement was originally negotiated and signed, but I believed that this was a punishment for what she had done before, and for what she didn't do, namely, she did not devote herself to us. It took time, but Terry eventually learned to be kind and nice to me. We still had to see each other at events like college graduations and other family events. Sometimes we even got together for lunch. They talked about children, about other family matters, never about us. There was no possibility of reconciliation, and I think she realized this, since she never hinted at trying again. As for me, there was a part that felt like I took advantage of her divorce, as I had done very well financially, but then I thought about the emotional damage over the years, and all the guilt went away. My life, although not what I imagined years ago, has been pretty good. I found a great apartment and bought a big boat, so now I spend a lot of time on the water, and there seems to be a demand for single men in their early 50s without the burden of their past. In general, life is good. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to